So then I started middle school, and I was still pretty apathetic about religion. I was actually starting to take real science classes for the first time. And I remember vividly when I was in my 8th grade biology class, and I don't remember if we were talking about abiogenesis or evolution. I don't remember what we were talking about specifically, but we were talking about something like that. It was a biology class. And one of my classmates, they actually asked, are you going to teach about creationism? And my teacher was very strict. He bragged about my classes in democracy. It's a totalitarianism or something, whatever he said, dictatorship. He said dictatorship. And, all the kids were afraid of him, but I was a good little student and I love science, so I was never on his bad side, so I didn't understand whatever. So one of the kids asked, so are we going to learn creationism? And he just went up and, no, we are not learning that. That's not science. And it was never brought up again. So we dodged that bullet in that class. That could have been really ugly if we had, like, a less strict teacher. That could have really devolved into something else. Yeah. So I was very fortunate that I had that teacher. And now that I think about it, he probably wasn't religious himself. Like, I think about all the other ways he's acted and the ways he's treated other students who bring up things like this. And he was probably the first non-religious person outside of my family I've ever been exposed to. I don't know for sure. It's not really something you talk about. And until probably last month, I don't think I've ever been close friends with anyone. Actually, that's a total lie. It's a total lie. Never mind. Because I remembered someone else, but that's a whole nother story. Yeah, so I was never really exposed to creationism at all until after I was in maybe my second or third year of biology in high school, because I was an IB, and you get to choose which classes you want to take as a higher level, and I chose biology because I've always wanted to be a paleontologist, and I figured biology was the way to go, which I'm glad I did. I love the subject so much. It's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Specifically what in biology. Who knows? We'll see. I'm still an undergrad, so I don't even know what lab I want to work with next semester, let alone what career I want. So in middle school, I started off in 6th grade really liking this guy. Like, this was my first real crush, I guess you could say. I mean, like, I liked someone in, like, 5th grade, but that was just because we've been best friends since we were kindergarten, and, that turned into a crush later. Whatever. That's not what we're talking about. I had this insane crush on this guy, and at this time I was completely apathetic about church. And that summer, I was just so completely obsessed with this guy that one day it just happened. One day I was bored, and I was like, it'd be pretty cool to make up cool, like, goddesses and gods and stuff. So I started drawing and making up cool mythologies and stuff because I was really into fiction writing at the time. I thought, it'd be really cool for fantasy. And then I started coming up with, like, rituals for stuff, and it started turning into, like, underneath my dresser, I had this little stash of their drawings and all the rituals and calendars I'd made up, and, like, I had these rocks that I would use in the rituals and, like, little beads I would pray over. And yeah, I actually started going through daily rituals because I was so obsessed with this guy. I mean, I'm deeply ashamed of that now. That was 6th grade, and it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was something that just kept me from falling into depression, I guess. So that I probably turned out for the best. But I got back in 7th grade, and I realized, like, what I had done, and I felt absolutely horrible. Like, I had been away from the church for so long that I started worshiping idols like some pagan. I was freaking out. And at the same time, I started reading this one book series because I was really into dragons at the time. I can't recall the exact book series. Like, I could picture it, but I can't remember what it was called. But it was basically, dragons escaping persecution, so they turned into humans who are still being persecuted, and then the stories about their kids. But these were Christian dragons, and the people who were hunting them were actually the minions of Satan, So they had to go be virtuous. And I was actually inspired by these books because the main girl character was just like this most pure and devout Christian ever, despite all this hardship she had gone through. Like, she'd been adopted, and she actually had, like, wings that she had to hide all the time. And I was so, like, guilty, you know? Like, they really guilt-tripped me with that book. I mean, now that I think about it, that was a freaking work of genius. Like, could you imagine a better way to guilt someone into believing, again, this sort of thing? Like, here's this girl who no one wants to adopt her. She has to wear a backpack all the time to hide these giant demonish looking wings. She's being persecuted, and she still is the most optimistic, pure person you've ever met. If she can believe and be pure and not a sinner, why can't you? You know? Oh, Christian fiction. Yeah. So it really, really guilted me. And I became really hardcore Christian. I guess you can't say super hardcore now that I think about it. I wasn't a fundie. I didn't think, you know, that evolution was wrong or anything like that. I still understood acceptance. But I was thinking, like, for me, I had to be a complete fundie for me. And I started acting differently. And, you know, while everyone else was starting to have, like, first boyfriends and girlfriends and stuff like that, I was, like, shy. And I didn't want to do anything that was sinning. I felt guilty all the time. I started praying all the time again. Yeah. So that continued probably through freshman year of my high school. This little phase. It's probably, with the exception of when I was a really little kid, with the exception of that, it's probably the only time I was really Christian. You know, I've been Christian for life, but I've only really cared 2 time periods. One time I was too young to know what I was talking about, and another time I was just completely guilt-ridden by all these things I had done. But then I started becoming apathetic again. We actually started going to church more often, and yeah, I just, you know, it slowly wore away. It actually didn't completely wear away until about the end of my junior year of high school for other reasons. But yeah, it started getting weird away. And I think that's when I started becoming exposed to, like, other religions, other ways of people thinking about the way the world works. But it's mostly, that's when I actually started learning about the world. It's when I was first exposed to the idea of abiogenesis. Like I said, in my IB biology class, I was learning about this sort of thing. And now that I think about it, okay, so my high school biology teacher, I think, is a pagan, or he's something like that. You know, he celebrates the solstice, and I don't know, he's really into German stuff. So I'm thinking he's a pagan, or Wiccan, or something like that. I don't know what he is, but you know, he would always be like celebrating the solstice with us. So who knows what he was? But in the IB guides that they give us notes for the class, and he just was lazy and used the notes. And it had abiogenesis and suggested theories, like it had, you know, panspermia, it had hydrothermic vents, you know, with the chemical energy, you know, creating chemical reactions that could have spawned some kind of life, and actually had, like, I forget the wording, it had something that rang of creationism, like, or design, or something like that, and he had just crossed it out completely with Sharpie and was like, no one even questioned. We were not learning that. Actually, one person did question. The Islamic girl that was in our class, she actually asked, you know, are we going to learn this? And he just like, no, because it's wrong. And everyone already hated this teacher, so they didn't see a point in arguing with him. I'm sure she really, I don't know, she was really nice. I don't think she hated him for it, but I know a lot of people did.